General adult tests, common allergies. Hay fever, also called allergic rhinitis, eczema, and asthma, are among the most common allergies. As with other allergies, they are due to an overreaction of the body's immune system, which produces excessive amounts of substances such as histamine and cytokines. It is these substances that cause the symptoms of allergy. Many people suffer from hay fever or allergic rhinitis, an allergy to pollen or dust. When allergens bind to mast cells, a type of immune cell just below the lining of the nose, sinuses, and eyes, these cells release histamine. The histamine triggers an inflammatory response, including sneezing, a runny nose, and itchy, watery eyes. Normal immune response in lungs. When an allergen is inhaled, immune cells in the airways of the lungs produce chemicals called cytokines. Normally, these substances cause only minor swelling of the airways. Eczema is probably triggered by an irritant, an allergen, on the skin that stimulates mast cells in the deeper layers of the skin to release histamine, which causes inflammation and irritation. In an asthma attack, there is an exaggerated response to an inhaled allergen. The cytokines cause the airways to swell and produce large amounts of mucus, leading to symptoms including wheezing, coughing, and breathlessness. Thank you for your attention.
Let's now go to pathology, full empty conditions, part 3. The strong pathogenic factor deficient upright Qi, although the three situations of strong pathogenic factor deficient upright Qi, weak pathogenic factor, strong upright Qi, and weak pathogenic factor, deficient upright Qi all lead to a full empty condition. They are in fact quite different, and I will explain the differences with examples. When the pathogenic factor is strong and the upright Qi is deficient, the condition is a mixed, full empty condition that may be external or internal, and it is extremely common. An example of such an external full empty condition is that of a person with a deficient upright Qi. This is extremely common, who is invaded by a strong external wind. As the upright Qi is deficient, the clinical manifestations will be less intense than the previous case, that is, when the pathogenic factor and the upright Qi are both strong. Contrary to the previous case, if the patient has a fever, in this case, it will be quite low. An example of an interior condition with a strong pathogenic factor and a deficient upright Qi is that of a person suffering from post-viral fatigue syndrome, characterized by a pronounced intense dampness but a deficient upright Qi. This situation is very common. In such cases, the upright Qi is still trying to fight off the pathogenic factor, but it does so ineffectually. This is exactly what happens in post viral fatigue syndrome when the patient's upright Qi is ineffective in fighting off the pathogenic factor. This results in a very protracted chronic condition that for long periods gets neither better nor worse. Another example of an interior condition with a strong pathogenic factor and deficient upright Qi is that of a patient suffering from a serious condition of phlegm and a simultaneous deficiency of the spleen and kidneys. This situation is rather common, and it is one that, in the elderly, may potentially lead to serious diseases. The strong pathogenic factor deficient upright Qi, it's a mixed full condition. It may be external or internal. If internal, there's moderate fever, frequently seen in post-viral fatigue syndrome. Thank you for your attention.
Now let's have foot Yang-Ming stomach meridian. Stomach 26 Wiley, outside mouth. It is located on the upper abdomen, 2 chun lateral to the anterior midline, 1 chun inferior to the umbilicus. Stomach 26, Wiley, outside mount or the outer mount. Ellis Weisman and Voss in 1989 indicate that mount refers to in outside mount, could refer to its location on the outer edge of the mount of the rectus abdominis, harmonizes the stomach and lower jaw. Indication, abdominal pain and spasm. Local point for pain around the umbilicus or internal and intestinal spasm. Severe abdominal pain, Weiling, stomach 26, and Chen Shu, stomach 25, supplementing life. How to find? The distance between the umbilicus and the upper border of the pubic symphysis is divided into 5 proportional chun, which can vary considerably from the patient's finger chun. Therefore, only proportional chun measurements should be used. From the umbilicus, measure 1 chun down. Stomach 26 is located 2 chun laterally from there. Located on the same level are Bren 7, which is on the anterior midline, and kidney 15, 0.5 chun lateral to the anterior midline. How to needle it? Vertically, 0.5 to 1 chun, caution, peritoneum, and pregnancy. Action indications, regulate the chi, alleviates pain and cold. Thank you for your attention.
Let's now go to spleen patterns. Let's discuss retention of damp heat in the spleen. This concept is due to the accumulation of damp heat in the middle jaw, leading to disturbances of the functions of the spleen and stomach in transporting and transforming. It is also called damp heat in the middle jaw or damp heat in the spleen and stomach. The key symptoms would be functional impairment of the spleen and stomach in transporting and transforming, along with retention of damp heat at the same time. The analysis of this pattern is caused by invasion of the damp heat pathogen or excessive intake of acrid, warm, fatty, sweet foods, or alcoholic drinks, which produces damp heat. In clinical manifestations, the fullness in the abdomen, poor appetite, nausea, loose stools with a foul odor, heaviness of the body and limbs, thirst with desire for drinking in small sips, rising and falling fever, which cannot be relieved after sweating, jaundice of the skin and sclera with a fresh, bright yellow color, itching, a red tongue with a yellow sticky coating, and a soft and rapid pulse. In the analysis of damp heat in the spleen pattern, the retention of damp heat in the spleen causes when it fails to transport and transform, it causes fullness in the abdomen, poor appetite, and nausea. If the damp heat obstructing the chi activity, it causes loose stool with a foul odor. When steaming of the liver and gallbladder leading bile to flow outward to the skin, it causes jaundice skin and sclera, a bright yellow color, itching of the skin. When dampness accumulates in the body and limbs, it causes heaviness of the body and limbs. When dampness prevents heat approaching the body surface, it causes rising and falling fever, which cannot be relieved after sweating, thirst with the desire to drink in small sips, and a yellow urine. Also, a red tongue with a yellow sticky coating and a soft and rapid pulse are indicative of damp heat accumulating in the spleen. In the retention of damp heat in the spleen pattern, the pathology would be interior exuberance of dampness encumbers the spleen, which fails to transport and transform. The clinical manifestations would be fullness or pain in the epigastrium and abdomen, poor appetite, nausea, yellow color of the skin and sclera, loose stools, a feeling of heaviness, a greasy tongue coating, and a soft pulse. The pathology would be damp heat accumulation, failure to transform and transport, and in clinical manifestations, it would be fresh yellow skin and yellow sclera, itching of the skin, loose stools with a foul odor, thirst with a desire to drink in small sips, fever which cannot be
Mhm.
relieved after
Mhm.
sweating, a red tongue with a yellow sticky coating, and a soft and a rapid pulse. In a damp in a cold dampness encumbering the spleen pattern, the pathology would be the same, the clinical manifestations would also be the same, but the pathology it would be interior exuberance of cold dampness encumbering the spleen yang. The clinical manifestations would be smoky, yellow skin and sclera, edema, scanty urine, abdominal pain with preference for warmth, profuse leukorrhea, and large tongue. This is the differentiation of damp heat in the spleen and coldness encumbering the spleen. The comparison of damp heat, the retention of damp heat in the spleen pattern. The common symptoms would be fever, loose stools, yellow urine, red tongue with a white sticky coating, and a soft and rapid pulse. The location would be in the middle jaw, and the different symptoms would be fullness or pain in the epigastrium and abdomen, poor appetite, and nausea. The damp heat in the large intestine pattern, the common symptoms would be the same. The location would be in the large intestine, and the different symptoms would be in abdominal pain, flooding diarrhea, diarrhea with pus and blood, or dysentery. The damp heat in the spleen, the etiology, exterior damp heat, eating contaminated or unclean food, possible background, spleen chi deficiency. The signs and symptoms would be fullness of the epigastrium and lower abdomen, epigastric or abdominal pain, poor appetite, feeling of heaviness, thirst without desire to drink, nausea or vomiting, loose stools with offensive odor, yellow urine, heavy, cumbersome limbs, tenesmus, feeling of heat, low-grade fever, unabated by sweating, headache, bitter taste, and yellow sclera. The pulse would be slippery and rapid or soggy. The tongue would be red, sticky, yellow coating. The treatment principle we can use would be to clear heat, resolve dampness, and regulate the intestines. The acupuncture treatment we can use the spleen 9, which resolves lower burner damp heat, do 9 resolves damp heat, ladder 20 resolves dampness, ren 9 harmonizes intestines, stomach 22 regulates intestines, bladder 22 regulates spleen and stomach, stomach 25 regulates large intestine, spleen 6 resolves damp heat, large intestine 11 clears heat and resolves damp, gallbladder 34 resolves damp heat, ren 11 harmonizes middle burner, stomach 28 regulates lower burner, and large intestine 4 clears heat. For yellowing of blood or eyes, drain liver 3 and gallbladder 34. For itchy skin, add spleen 10. For pronounced heat, drain. You can use do 14 and prick large intestine 1 to bleed. You can needle with drainage but no moxa. The relevant advice, it is essential that a person with chronic damp heat invading the spleen avoids as far as possible food and beverages that create damp heat, dampness or heat. It is usually not enough to avoid sugar, sweets, cake and so on. They should also avoid dried fruits, stevia, artificial sweeteners, and anything else that has a concentrated sweet flavor. Alcohols, hot spices, including chili, pepper, chocolate, and garlic will also be problematic, as will dairy products. Whilst they should avoid things that create damp heat, they should try to consume a diet that is beneficial for the spleen. Thank you for your attention.
Oh. Diagnosis by 8 fundamentals. Diagnosis of exterior and interior. The exterior-interior dimensions concerns the location of illness. It provides a means of determining a depth of the pathological processes. Exterior and interior are opposing and relative concepts. In regard to the body, the exterior refers to the somatic body, whereas the interior refers to the internal organs or the viscera. In regard to the internal organs, the full organs are exterior and the some organs are interior. Differentiation of exterior-interior is especially important when treating an exogenously induced illness. Its significance lies not only in determining the depth of involvement and the degree of severity, but also the tendency of change of the illness. In general, if the illness is in the exterior, it is superficial and mild, whereas if it is in the interior, it is deep and severe. Movement from the exterior to the interior reflects worsening of the illness. Movement from the interior to the exterior reflects improvement. Accurate determination of exterior-interior is thus essential for grasping the course of the illness, devising an appropriate method of treatment, and obtaining satisfactory results. In the exterior syndrome, syndromes of the exterior are those that result when exogenous pathogenic evils attack the body's surface species. They are commonly seen in the initial stages of exogenous illnesses. Characteristically, interior symptoms are of abrupt onset and a short course. When the 6 exogenous pathogenic evils are lodged in the exterior, they block the normal dispersion of defensive qi. In response, genuine qi rises to the battle, the evil qi, and this battle gives rise to the exterior symptoms. Typical exterior syndrome in the following are fever with cold aversion, headache, body aches, a thin white tongue coating, and a floating pulse. Sometimes there are also nasal congestion and drainage, throat irritation, and coughing. In the interior syndrome, syndromes of the interior indicates the abnormal process are located in the interior of the body and reflect dysfunction of the visceral organs, qi, and blood. They are commonly seen in the later stages of exogenous illnesses as well as in illness of internal injury and a variety of miscellaneous conditions. Characteristically, interior symptoms have complex caution, are deeper in location, and have a longer course. The range of interior symptoms is very broad. Indeed, all symptoms other than exterior symptoms may be regulated as interior symptoms. They can also result from many mechanisms. Transmission of an exterior illness into the interior, where the exogenous pathogenic evil attacks the visceral organs, direct invasion of the visceral organs by exogenous evils, injury by the 7 passions, dietary overindulgence, physical or overexertion, and others. These processes all injure the visceral organs, causing disturbance of their functions and disorderly activities of qi and blood. Because of the complexity of their causation and position and variability of their location, interior symptoms are quite variable and often show mixed symptoms of cold, heat, deficiency, and strength. Specific of the various diseases. The following list includes only the most common and typical interior symptoms: high fever without cold aversion, thirst, dry constipation, dark oliguria, thick coating tongue, and a deep pulse. Thank you for your attention.
Physical examination strategies. Physical examination of special populations. Considerations for the pregnant patient. The examination sequence for the pregnant woman is the same as for the adult, but requires a more inclusive assessment of the abdomen and pelvis. Remember, it is more difficult for a pregnant woman to assume the supine position. The preferred method is the side-lying position. Use the supine position only when necessary. Have the pregnant woman empty her bladder prior to examination. Abdominal assessment may be particularly uncomfortable for a pregnant woman because of associated urinary urgency and frequency. Considerations for the neonatal patient. Newborns require special considerations in regard to physical assessment. Assessment techniques may vary related to age, wakefulness, and/or illness. With neonates, it is important to look carefully before touching. Inspecting without disturbing the baby is the key. Visual assessment provides many clues in determining the diagnosis. Assessment sequence for newborn should be head, fontanelles, extremities, abdomen, and the rest of the body. Always save invasive procedures such as otoscopic examination for lust. Visual assessment of the newborn. Inspection of the newborn should include these key characteristics: awareness, alertness, responsiveness, and playfulness, posture, flexidity, tension, and spasticity, gross deformity, spontaneity in behavior, obvious and subtle interactions between parents and child, feeding, sucking, and swallowing. Considerations for the pediatric patient. Remember to consider developmental stages while performing assessment. Know that children are unpredictable, so you may need to alter the sequence of the assessment to suit the moment. For example, a sleeping baby enables a good assessment of the heart, lungs, and abdomen, while a crying infant allows visualization of the oropharynx. If necessary, allow the parent to be the examination table for the comfort of the infant and parent. To win cooperation of children, establish comfort prior to examination. Take a few minutes to establish a relaxed environment. Give a 1-year-old an object to hold in his hands. With a toddler, use a gentle pot, pleasing words, or interactive play. Allow children to touch the equipment used during the examination. For example, allow the child to use the stethoscope to listen to his parents' heart. Thank you for your attention.
Let's now go to acupuncture for emergencies. Let's discuss panic attack, epilepsy, and hysteria. For panic attack, we can use acupuncture on the DO26 and DO20 points. Use acupuncture on the REN15 and DO20 points. Acupuncture on the SJ1 point. Acupuncture on the kidney 1 point. Moxibustion on the heart 7 and kidney 6 points. Acupuncture on the shoulder back point. For epilepsy, we can use bleeding therapy on the veins on the back of the ears. Use acupuncture on the DO26 point. Use acupuncture on the DO8 point after the 9th vertebra and the Yao Qi point. Use acupuncture on the DO20 and kidney 1 points. Use acupuncture on REN15, DO26, kidney 1, and REN17 points. Use acupuncture on the stomach 40 points and use acupuncture on the shoulder back point. For hysteria, we can use acupuncture on the DO26 point. Use acupuncture on the DO20 and kidney 1 point, especially for hysteria paralysis. Use acupuncture on the REN15 and DO20 points. Use moxibustion on the heart 7 and kidney 6 points. Use acupuncture on the shoulder back point. Use acupuncture with the 13 ghost needle technique. This technique is for the treatment of a condition in which A spirit or ghost resides inside the body of the patient. In such cases, the patient may speak like a different person by age and by sex. When using this technique, do the following. Feel the pulse on the root side of the patient's middle fingers. If no pulse can be felt, there is no need to use this technique. Use acupuncture on points in this sequence: Do26, lung 11, spleen 1, PC7, heart 7, Do16, stomach 6, REN 24, PC8, Do23, REN 1, and the under the tongue points. If the symptoms subside, there is no need to finish all the points. If the patient speaks, ask what the patient wants. It is actually not the patient but the spirit speaks. Try to meet its need and convince the spirit to leave. If the doctor has no confidence to involve himself into such special treatment, do not use this technique. Thank you for your attention. Mm, Let's now go to fibromyalgia. Let's discuss diagnosis. Diagnosing fibromyalgia can be difficult because there is no specific test to diagnose the condition. However, tests are needed to rule out other health problems such as hyperthyroidism, polymyalgia, rheumatica, and rheumatoid arthritis or lupus, which can be confused with fibromyalgia. Unlike fibromyalgia, these rheumatic diseases cause inflammation in the joints and tissues. Blood tests may include complete blood count and flow cytometric analysis, thyroid function test, blood calcium level, erythrocyte sedimentation rate, C-reactive protein, anti-nuclear antibodies, rheumatoid factor, creatinine phosphokinase, alkaline phosphatase, transaminases, HCV and EBV antibodies. In the past, doctors would check 18 specific points on a person's body to see how many of them were painful when pressed firmly. However, newly guidelines do not require a tender point exam to make a diagnosis, whereas a physical exam can be helpful to detect tenderness and to exclude other causes of muscle pain. As you can see in the figure, the tender points for diagnosis of fibromyalgia. Referred pain areas from the points area in dark blue, referred pain areas in light blue. The fibromyalgia diagnostic criteria established by the American College of Rheumatology in 1990 include a history of widespread pain in all four quadrants of the body for a minimum duration of 3 months, and in pain at least 11 of the 18 designated tender points. However, in 2010, ACR diagnosis criteria recommended that focus on the number of the tender points should be replaced by a physician's physical and interview examination. And the three criteria were listed for an FM diagnosis as follows. First, pain and symptoms over the past week based on the total of number of painful areas out of 19 parts of the body, plus level of severity of the symptoms including fatigue, waking up, refreshed, cognitive or memory or thought problems. Second, general physical symptoms including symptoms lasting at least 3 months at a similar level. And thirdly, no other health problem that would explain the pain and other symptoms. Thank you for your attention.